Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignorance is Strength Podcast. Hope you all enjoyed episode number 33, the Rest Assured Reunion, where we welcome back good old Bob Kemp. Definitely talked about the good old days. Might be behind us, but everybody's got to move on and whatnot. And speaking of moving on, got a brand new guest today. Excited to interview this guy. Been following him on Instagram for a little bit now. We've got the host of the MegaMan Podcast, Mr. Steven Martinez. How you doing, Steven?
What's up? Hey, Fabian, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I really, really appreciate it. There's a lot of podcasters around your area in the Monty and Whittier area. A lot. Yeah, I noticed that, man. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background on how mine started. Mm-hmm. Just bottom line, I was bored as shit during quarantine, and I'm just like, man, there's no way to hang out with people, and I thought, I had a friend of mine who had a podcast. I'm like, he seems to be having a good time. He's talking to a lot of his old friends and whatnot. I'm like, yes. I can do that. I'm like, I've been known to, hold court and have a conversation and it's, it can't be that hard. Right. But there are some things, and I think that's what we're going to talk about it right now, that are actually kind of a challenge or are actually work when it comes to podcasting. Right. So I want to just jump in there real quick, man. Do things a little bit backwards, because first I like to, usually get people's history and backstory. But with you, I want to kind of really just jump into the podcast, what it's all about. And, I can't really pinpoint my podcast. Like when people ask, what's your podcast about? Some people, they might have a business podcast. They might have one about, I don't know, movies. They might have one about music. I'm like, you know what? I just like having good conversations with interesting people. That's it. Do you kind of have the same concept, or how would you describe your podcast to someone who's never listened before? So let's go back from the beginning. I did the podcast on accident. I was a huge supporter of the comedy shows. Like I used to watch Felipe Esparza, George Perez, Martin, and all that stuff. So what all happened was when George Perez was invited on the Joe Rogan's podcast, Joe Rogan planted that seed to George Perez. Hey, do a podcast. I was hearing that episode. A couple weeks later, George Perez, he made a podcast called the George Perez Stories. I quickly subscribed. At the time, I heard the episodes. The first episode was Jason Rouse. Then he had Renee and Jack Jr. And this is where everything changed. At the time, I did not know who Felipe Esparza was. I didn't know who, I did not know who Martin Moreno. Martin Moreno is from Wilmington, California, which I grew up. And I started hearing these episodes. And because of George Perez, he planted that seed to have Felipe Esparza do the podcast, Martin Moreno. And I remember with Felipe Esparza, he started doing the podcast because of the writer for Dave Chappelle. He had a podcast called We're the Champs podcast and stuff. And when I quickly subscribed to all that stuff, I've always been going to the shows until one day, George Perez, he told me, hey, MegaMan, what are you doing? He says, nothing. It's like, I want you to come on the 50th episode as the best fan guest. And I remember at that time, man, I was high as fuck because it took me about 4 hours to get home, driving to Cypress to Long Beach. And so 2 weeks after, I got invited on to another podcast, comedian Martin Rizzo. That's Johnny Rocket. That's his best friend. It trickles down. So he invited me on Squad by the Bell. That's the one I give credit to, Fabian. He got me into the podcast game, showed me how to do by Anchor. And at the time, excuse me, I don't know what my podcast was. I was just thrown into the lion's den to see what you're made of. And until a week or two later, I was on YouTube Live watching Felipe Esparza on the What's Up Food podcast. Felipe Esparza said, shout us to fucking MegaMan at the MegaMan's podcast. Give him a follow. A day or two later, I had over 100 messages. When's the next episode? Wow. I just put out a sucky ass episode. I had the most corniest voice. The episode was a trailer and an intro because I didn't know how to do it because no one taught me. So it was only 34 minutes, and I was like, fuck, man, what am I going to talk about? I was talking about
my life. I was talking about ass and pussies and friends and benefits. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And so I started losing the numbers, and I was like, what's going on? And so I made a podcast page on Instagram. I started over and said, how am I gonna get people to know? If I don't want to quit because I'm thrown in there. And there was, I'm not gonna mention who, but at the time there was good people who were giving me good advice and bad people were giving me bad advice because they did not want to see me succeed. And when I started doing it, it's like, I'm not going to listen to anyone. I want to do it myself. So I took about 2 weeks off. I started the podcast. This is how I want to be. So, okay, how am I going to have people listen to my podcast? As I don't want no one to know me as MegaMan. I want everyone to know me as Stephen Martinez. So I started doing these episodes called the MegaMan's Life, which talks about my childhood, when I was little till now, what the journey I've been through. And some people think like, oh, it's an inspiration story. Some people think like, oh, you just want people to feel sorry for you and this, because I think a lot of us podcasters, there's some that are very private because they don't want to open up, but you have to open up. If you're going to be in the podcast world, you have to shed light of who you are on social media to get that exposure. And a lot of people can't do that because it's like, and that's where some people might tune you off. Right. So I started doing the podcast and talking about my life. I was mentally abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, sexually abused. And a lot of people were kind of shocked, like, wow, I didn't know about MegaMan like this. And it kind of made people feel like he's just like one of us, because a lot of people think like podcasters are too stuck up to say hi and bye or take pictures, but I wasn't like that. And I was just always responding to people. And I remember, because I have a lot of connections in the comedy world, the celebrities, athletes, and all that stuff. It's just, I just know people, because you go to comedy shows, you're going to meet up with people. So I remember my first guest I ever had was Tony A. the Wizard. Now, Tony A. the Wizard has one of the best Chicano podcasts out in the West Coast, or probably United States, called Rhodium Radio. And my second was MC Pancho from San Pedro, from the Harbor area. And my first celebrity female guest I had was Tanya Estrada. She's from La Puente. She's really well known comedian. She's like the Renaissance woman, and everything. And ever since then, it's been trickling down of getting all these celebrities and people coming on my podcast.
Nice. So I guess it seems like you have like a lot of a touch of comedy on there. That's really kind of what gave you your start, from what I gather from all of that. And then you have a lot. I've noticed, because I pay attention to a lot of the guests you have. You have a lot of cool people that come on, man. Like whether they're promoting some kind of beer or some kind of craft or art or something like that. But the one thing that I did happen to catch is that it's mostly Hispanic people. And I don't know if that's by design or if it's just kind of like, it just happens. But I think that's really important because when it comes to, Hispanic people, Latino people, whatever you want to call us, as long as you don't call it Latinx, Latinx, whatever.
I don't know. I'm old school. Hey, we're all of us.
Yeah. Nobody likes that anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. Edit that out.
I won't. I know. Because I'm like, to go off on a tiny little tangent there, that whole Latinx, Latinx, whatever. To me, that's just a bunch of PC white people trying to tell us what's good for us. And I love white people, but I'm not going to use their stupid label. But it seems like a lot of your, like I said, a lot of your guests happen to be Hispanic people, and I think it's important because that's a genuine voice. I noticed I don't know if it's one of the interviews or your. The documentary that you're going to be on that's coming out. One of them, I noticed you mentioned like, hey, you didn't speak Spanish right off the bat, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of hard. And a lot of people don't understand that about Hispanic kids growing up. It's like this: you're brown, you look the part. It's like you should be speaking Spanish, and I got that a lot too. Because my Spanish was pretty shitty. I didn't really learn till I was an adult, working full time, working with with kids and trying to speak to their parents. Where I'm like, okay, I really need to pick up this whole Spanish thing a lot better, but talk about that a little, man. Do you feel like you're connected to like your Hispanic community and culture, or is it something you have to work on?
Well, that's a very good question because I'm re-educating myself. There's a story into it. People always tell me, "Oh, look at MegaMan's a coconut warrior," or "Why does he not speak Spanish?" But a lot of people don't know the story. So people are gonna make assumptions like, "Well, why is he doing it? He's not really, excuse me, a true Mexican." There is a story. I don't talk to my mom and dad anymore. I disown them because at the time they were brainwashing me to hate your own kind, but also don't marry someone who's from Mexico. Don't downgrade yourself, And I remember, I'll never forget, I was 8 years old. And I told my dad, "Hey, Dad, how come you don't teach me how to speak Spanish?" Well, that was my first time my dad knocked me out. He knocked me out. I was unconscious for 3 hours, laying down. My mom couldn't do anything. He's like, "No, just leave him on the ground." I was knocked out unconscious. And I got up, and I remember my dad told me, "Now you know why I don't teach you how to speak Spanish." English was always first. And, we lived in Long Beach, and I moved to Northern California. And, if you're a Mexican and you're living in Northern California, first English is English, even in Texas too. You would get beat up, because, they wanted to make it white and everything. So I didn't know at the time back then they brainwashed me to hate my own kind, but also I was embarrassed to be Mexican. Until I realized that, a lot of people are getting woke right now and everything. And I wanted to start over. And that's the thing you want to shed light because, why do I have a lot of Mexican or Latino people on my podcast, to shed light. But a lot of people need to realize, even though I have a Chicano podcast, I'm diverse. I can play both fields. I can focus on the Chicano and our people and everything, but also I could be diverse and do podcasts with Black minorities, whites, Asians, gays, lesbians, and all that stuff. So I can kind of be more like a chameleon. I can adapt to any podcast or adapt to any environment, even if it's in the city life or in the country life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think too, that's the fun part is kind of like my whole tagline is, I don't know shit, but that's okay. Because I love when I don't know about something, when people can teach me a little bit of something, I think like you talking about trauma and abuse, I've gone through a little bit of that. I think a lot of people, a lot of Hispanic kids have, but I think my most listened to episode was about, trauma and abuse with the former guest, Mary Eileen, who really just was very vulnerable and told her story. I think a lot of people could relate to it. Definitely learning about things like that. I think everybody who listens is kind of like a fly on the wall eavesdropping, and if they can listen to a good conversation like that, I think even though it's content that might not be fun, it's still it's enjoyable because you're learning something, and I think that's what makes a good podcast.
And also for me being a podcaster, like even to this day, since day one until now, I still get shit in the Latino and the Latina community and stuff, because it's like, why are you so trying to be all about the people and you're Mexican, but you don't speak Spanish, or you're not born from Mexico and all that stuff and everything, from all these different types of categories of what they call us and everything and stuff like that. Say, hey, look, man, I'm the same way as you, man. I'm just trying to make it, there's one thing I hate so much is that people talk about we need to be unity. We got to be there for each other. But at the same time, when you see one person doing good, it's crabs in a bucket. We got to pull his ass down. And it's the whole jealousy. And I looked into it. The reason why we're like that is because of the fucking Spaniards when they came over here and with the blood and everything, they made us to hate each other and stuff. Imagine if the Spaniards didn't come over here, would we still be loving each other? Would we still be caring about each other, be helping each other out? Is this that there's certain podcasters that they talk the talk, but they walk the walk, but they're always bashing on other people. It's like, I don't see myself as that. And to me, I like to help people or help other podcasters. And sometimes other podcasters be like, man, I wasn't thinking you would be like that. So why? I thought you were going to be one of those, like, help me out or just talk shit and bash on me and stuff like that. Says it's not even like that. So we have to change the cycle. Instead of us hating against each other or doing this, we should be helping each other out, because right now, Fabian, we're in the golden age of podcasts, and there's a lot of Latina podcasts out there, and we got to spread this movement. A lot of things right now we're living in fragile times in the United States, and we got to do something about it. There is a lot of people being woke, and all those armchair Mexicans, all these old school mentalities, they're dying off. You know, we got to break this cycle, and things are changing. We have to change. There's so many documentaries. There's so many social medias. There's people who are showing the real facts and everything, what people don't, our parents or grandmothers don't want us to talk about. But I think in a way we're adapting quickly, we're evolving, and we're changing the way how we see things in society now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of meat on the bone with what you just said. And I want to kind of take a bite off of that right there and talk about, you know, the whole like instinctive jealousy. I've seen that all along growing up, and I just kind of nodded my head when you were talking about it because, you know, you could like, let's say you see like a distant family member, right? And they're doing great. You know, they're making great money. You know, they have a brand new house, and you're like, oh, cool. That I want to do that. That's, you know, that good for them. But a family member, like even a parent could be like, well, they're not that smart, or, you know, their house isn't that great. It's like, but just give them that congratulations, you know, give them that little bit, you know.
It's I'm telling you, it's envy, it's jealousy. You know, that's the thing from this COVID. I had to push away because I had to part ways with a lot of people in the COVID, and even some of the Latino podcasts, because it was too toxic, it was too negative. And when I took a month off, because I had a lot of episodes, I really wanted to reflect, what am I doing wrong? How am I going to get to succeed on a podcast where if you're a Latino or Latina podcast, they put you in a fucking category and you can never get out. It's like you're going to be stuck in that pond forever. Well, to me, I don't like this pond. I want to go to that ocean. I'm cool with this pond, but I want to be, because you have your circle of people or your certain podcasts, but you have to evolve. Sometimes in a way, when there's too much negative or toxic people from family members, podcasters, friends, and all that, you know, you got to get rid of it. If not, it's going to hold you down.
And, you know, speaking of negativity too, I noticed before, you know, on one of your, I think it was an Apple podcast on the reviews, man, some fucking haters on there. They're being a little harsh, right?
No, there's a situation on it. And, you know, with me, you know how I am. You're lucky you got this podcast episode, because I'm going to call some people out.
All right.
There was a group and from Kickback Podcast. I don't know if you heard of them.
Yes.
From Whittier. Yeah. Well, the person, he made a group of all these best Latino podcasts, and there were some killers on there. And I can kind of tell, like, I was like, this is not a good idea, because there's a little situation I have another beef with from another podcaster who's out in El Monte called Ramblings Alcoholics.
Oh.
And there's a little tension, and, you know, there's a lot of egos involved, you know, and everything. So I think in a way, if I told the person, if you're going to have this group, I think we should be helping each other out. But this was some other podcasts in that group. They just don't like it. So why did you put us in a group for if we're just going to be bashing on each other? So we parted ways. So when we parted ways, there was a couple of podcasts I had to talk to, say, hey, look, man, if I'm going to support you, you know, you can't be doing this and that, because there were some podcasters in that group that are being racist against Black people and being racist against their own kind, and they've been dropping the M-bombs. And I have a lot of well-known people or celebrities that DM me and say, MegaMan, is this the type of podcast that you listen to? This is so pro-Latino. And this is right after the George Floyd happened. So everyone was like, you know, taking sides in this and all that stuff. And, you know, I called some people out, like No Father, No Problem, Chicano Shuffle, new podcast order with Alpha Robles, the comedian who does with Fluffy, and this major one called Pura Culturas podcast in Minnesota. You know, I let them know, like, hey, man, this is what's going on. It's like, we got to talk about it. And this is the thing, like, if, let's say, for example, if I did something wrong, you should DM me. It's like, hey, Steven, can I call you? Let's talk about it. I heard something on the podcast. I would quickly call you. But the only thing is, some of these Latino podcasts, all they do is care about their image and their ego and stuff. They don't want to talk about it. And so what Buddha Kodura did is that when I parted ways, I called them out on their bullshit, not knowing that there was a lot of well-known celebrity people, I'll tell you off air, that called their bluff out. It's like, man, MegaMan's keeping it real, because I was calling facts. So what they did is when they were talking about we're for the culture and all that stuff, we got to be there. Well, if you're going to say all that stuff, that means you should be more insured. It's like, hey, we did something wrong. Hey, MegaMan, let me call you. Let's talk about it. They didn't do that. What they did is, because Lazy, he's the passionate one who controls the Buddha Culturas podcast. He freaking blocked me. And what he did is, I didn't know, because I couldn't see anything. I don't know what's going on. A lot of my members who follow Buddha Culturas podcast were like, hey, MegaMan, they're bashing on you. It's like, well, why do something like that and stuff? You know, all he had to do is call my number and all that. And what happened is, when he was bashing me the whole night, some people from the Buddha Culturas Troll Army were leaving death threats, making threats to my family. They posted up my address and this, whatever, and stuff. And I was thinking to myself, so this is the type of podcast that a lot of people support. What makes you think like, you know, a lot of people are going to support you? And what happens if, like, say, for example, like you supported them and say, hey, I'm going to part ways? What makes you think they won't do that to your podcast and call you out and make threats and all that stuff? So this is the thing where they say, oh, we never did it, but they made a lot of fake accounts where they were trolling. So, and this is one of the reasons why I had to part ways on not just 1 or 2 podcasts. I had to part ways on 8 or 9 podcasts. Now people are going to think, oh, MegaMan's drama. Said, no, I had to do this not only for me, but also do this for my friends, also do it to the followers, because, you know, I was getting called as a racist pro-Latino, and I'm not like that, because my podcast is very diverse. I interview whites, blacks, Asians, gays, lesbians, any color, and and everything. And that's one of the things where a lot of black minorities, black community was calling for my head, like, hey, what's going on? And there was a lot of people who were defending me and said, no, MegaMan is not like this. I know people that MegaMan is not like that. So that's one of the things that I had to part ways from this toxic relationship with some of these Latino podcasts. You know what? It was it hurt. It was very hurtful in the beginning. You're going to find out who's going to be there for you or not. And when I found out, a lot of people unfollow me, and a lot of the people who I thought they were my friends weren't my friends. But when I started over and moved on, I created more friends. I made more new followers. I have more people who's like, hey, MegaMan, we like you, man. You really are for the people. You have a caring heart. You're very passionate. You don't care about money. You don't care about ego and stuff. We got your back. And ever since then, my podcast has been blossoming ever since. But the only thing is, I had to start a new podcast page because the other one got hacked. So since I've been starting over my page, I've been getting a lot more people. And when people say, is your podcast a Chicano or a Chicano podcast? Like, yeah, but I say my podcast is very diverse, but I do care about our people, no matter what. If they have a small business, they have our podcaster or a celebrity, whatever. I don't care. I want you on because I want your story to be told the right way, and I want you to get exposure. And you know what? If I'm gonna make it, I want you to make it. I want everyone to fucking make it.
Hell yeah, man! Good attitude to have about it. Now, you touched on social media a bit, and to me, like, I'll be honest, like, I am not a fan of social media at all. I had not been on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that ever up until I started the podcast and the little side barbecue business I have.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when I started those 2 things, I'm like, okay, it might be time to expand a little bit more into these other realms. Cause I just had the Facebook, and to me, that's fine because you just keep up with old friends. But I noticed if you put a page on Facebook, nobody fucking follows it, man. And even if they do, they don't interact or anything like that. I think I have like very minimal, something like 200 followers on Facebook for my podcast page, and nobody looks at anything, right? Even when I just had like 50 followers on Instagram, like at least, half to 3/4 of them would be interacting. And that was way more than the Facebook page. So I'm like, you know what? It might be time to invest a little in that. So how has your relationship with social media been? Because like I said, to me, I am not a fan of it. I just I put it out there because I know I have to. And I know if I ever wanted to do anything serious with the podcast, I would have to kind of invest more
more effort and more time into that. But how is your relationship with social media overall?
Well, in the beginning and stuff, I was on social media for like a day, like 9 hours. I'll tell you this. So when you're promoting your social media on your podcast, it caused my relationship, because I'm so much on my phone and everything, but you have to get exposure. But knowing what I know now from back then until now, like I'm going to create a Facebook, but only go on it 2 times just to promote and everything. But because the Facebook are for the ones who are like your grandma, your grandpa, like the old timers who don't. That's like the MySpace now, but you still have to be involved to keep to have them updated. But to be on social media, I mean, I work overnights, and if I have lunch, I'll spend maybe 20 minutes here. If I come home, and if I have I'll post up maybe 5 stories, because think about it. I only have a Facebook and an Instagram. Imagine if I have a YouTube, a TikTok, Periscope, Snapchat, Twitter, Tumblr and all that. I mean, I'll be on it freaking forever. But I think I heard, I don't know what, but there was a thing where you could sync up like 5 of your Tumblr, Twitter, all that into one post, and you could send it out. That saves you close to about a day. 4 hours. I love that, because if I'm done with Facebook, I got to do Instagram. I got to do I'd rather just sync it all up. So that's what I've been doing on my personal one, my Instagram, and my Facebook. But I was telling you earlier, 2021, I'm going to blow my podcast out of the water, because you got to get that exposure. And this is one of the reasons why I always tell podcasters when I won't mention who. There was a podcaster that says, man, my numbers are down. Oh, I can't get this and all that. I told him, dude, you got to man up, man. Stop being a little bitch about it. Like, if you want your podcast and get that exposure, you got to do other people's podcasts. They can't come to you. You got to come to them. So either I'm doing an IG live, I'm doing a Zoom, how we're doing, you're coming to my area to do the podcast, or I come to you. You got to get that exposure. And this is why one of the reasons I did the Real American Cholos podcast. I did a whole bunch of podcasts, because you have to be seasoned. If you're doing this IG live, you're doing a live on YouTube and all that, so you can be comfortable. I mean, that's the thing I'm so used to. Like, hey, I'm good to go. Let's do it, But some podcasters, I'm just tired of hearing the complaints. Just stop complaining. Just do something about it. It's like, what are we doing wrong? Why is our numbers low? Everyone's going back to work. But now this lockdown, now everyone's going to be drinking more. Everyone's going to be hearing podcasts. So this is an opportunity to get your podcast out there.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I noticed you're very active, man. You're either always you're always live, or you're always on somebody else's podcast. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a day where you don't make a post on Instagram. Like, they're always like a bunch in a row,
Yeah, because right now, I just put out episode 177 with CC from C Snacks, but a lot of people don't know this. I am actually at 405 episodes.
Whoa.
So a lot of people don't know, like, yeah, right. So no, if you're doing other people's podcasts, you're doing your IG live, I could make this an episode, and I have a lot of backed up. There was a time, the most episodes I ever did in 1 week was about, I counted, I always think like miscount. It was 23 episodes in 1 fucking week. Yeah, because I was on vacation and I was in a zone. I didn't have my boys with me because I'm a full-time dad. And you got to get out there. I'm driving. There was times like, why are you wasting gas? Why are you going here? It's like, hey, I need that exposure. I need that hustle, because there's when you have a guest on, you're traveling to certain cities. I want to know the area. I want to know the environment. I want to know the families. I want to know the people. I want to know how they are. You got to know these personalities. How do you interview a certain person who doesn't want to talk, or this or this? You got to know these things. You got to have and even also if your guest cancels, you better have a plan B, C, D, E, and F. Because that happened one time where I had 4 people cancel on me. I had a plan A, B, and luckily I had the letter F. It was like, yeah, let's do it. Boom. You got to have backup plans. You got to, and a lot of people don't know. Like, I always tell people who start doing the podcast, you better work on your weaknesses. You better work on your strong points. You better be, crew oriented, and stuff like that. Because when you're a podcaster, when you have a guest on, I like to have them as a family, because you want to check up to see how they're doing. A lot of these podcasters are like, okay, whatever, bye, boom. That's it. You're done. You got to have that, because you never know who's going to be hearing your fucking podcast. You never know. You never know. I didn't even know I had Fluffy here in my podcast or major people here in my podcast. I was like, "Ooh, shit!" It's pretty scary when they DM you like, "Hey, I heard your podcast. Hey, good episodes." Like,
nice.
When you see those rare blue check marks, I was like, "God damn, man!" I get a little nervous.
Yeah, that's got to be like, right there. It's got to be like where it's really kind of, it's giving you a boost, it's giving you a push to kind of, get your shit even more exposure. And I know you've got a pretty lofty goal there, man. I think, from what I understand, you want to get onto the Joe Rogan podcast, right?
Yeah, because that's always been my dream. There's a story into it. People can think like, yeah, right, MegaMan. When me and my ex, we broke up for the first time in December, I was having these deja vu dreams in January of this year. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? I've been having these dreams. And I always remember like, oh, I was on the Joe Rogan's podcast. In my dream, I was more like my ex was there. I don't know why, but she was telling me like, oh, you did it. It's like you talked about it, but you did it. And I remember every time in the dream, Rogan's like, hey, MegaMan, I've been hearing good things about you. And this is like the year 2025.
Huh.
And everything's like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I would just doing podcasts. And I was supposed to have Joey Coco Diaz a while back. And I, in the podcast, and he moved to New Jersey. And there was a lot of good people wanted to get on that were affiliated with Joe Rogan and all. And I just wanted to get that exposure. And, that's been my all-time goal, is to be, before I die, is to be a guest on a Joe Rogan Story podcast, so I can have my story told. But when you think about it now, I don't want to put that pressure like, okay, it's all about Rogan, because I can't just tell him, hey, I want to be on your podcast. He has to come let me know. It's like, hey, are you ready to do my podcast? But I left a DM a while back and told him, hey, my name is Steve Martinez from the MegaMan Podcast. One day I hope to be a guest on your podcast. I'm working so hard. I'm grinding. I'm doing my podcast, even though it's a little pinch over here in Los Angeles, but I'm making my presence known in Texas. I'm going to go to New Orleans. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to do all this until, I get on the podcast, because the only thing that's lacking is the YouTube. Everyone wants YouTube. You got to get that exposure. So that's one of the reasons why I've been on a podcast invasion, just doing other people's podcasts and getting my name out there. But my really, really ultimate dream is to hopefully be a guest on Vlad TV on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's my inspiration right there, because people like, oh, I want to be how Joe Rogan is, and all. Like, okay, that's cool. But I like how Vlad TV, because he's very controversial. He tell you how it is. He does his homework. That to me is my inspiration to be like him, because he gets a lot of criticism, just like Charlemagne, like that, and everything. But that's the thing I've been working on, is how to make my podcast stay original still, because it's very hard to be original. It's very hard.
Now, from what from I gather from this conversation that we're having right now, I mean, it seems like at some point you would like to make it like almost like a full-time job to just do the podcast. Is that the goal? And also, how do you see yourself, getting there? Like, just to give you a little bit of reference for me, right? And this might be the wrong way of looking at it and the wrong lens to have, but I honestly have no aspirations of really kind of moving the podcast too far. I'm honestly just having fun with it. It's kind of like a hobby type of thing. I'm passionate about it, but not to the point where I think I can make a living off of it. If I wanted to, believe me, I'd be out there fucking cranking it out, and same thing you're doing. But to me, it's just more fun. It kind of keeps me a little bit centered. But you seem to have that drive where you want to make it something, a little bit more than just a hobby, right? You want to make a living off it. You want to monetize it. Am I correct in thinking that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And let's say, like, let's go back. There was times I wanted to quit the podcast at 10 episodes, 13 and all that. But But what you're going to find who you really are when you're in your 60th episode to your 100th episode. You're going to find if you really want to do the podcast or not. And when I got over that hump, where I took the monkey off my back, when I did 100 episodes, because I got shit for this, I did 100 episodes in 11 months. When you do 100 episodes, that takes you about 3 fucking years. And I did it, and I got shit for that because at the time in the beginning, I was putting an episode out every day for the past 2 months. And I didn't know you should put 2 episodes a week. And so I was burying my episodes, but people are still hearing it. So now that I'm at 405 episodes, I came to a conclusion. It's like, man, if I'm going to take my podcast to the next level, I have to get a lawyer. I have to structure my podcast, have contracts of like, hey, if I'm going to have a guest on, this is how it's going to be, because you're looking out for your podcast. You don't want to get sued. Like, hey, how come you didn't tell me about this? It's on the contract. And also to make it a business where if you want me to post something, like this is all going to happen next year. Like for businesses, like, hey, a post, I'll charge you like $50. And like, well, why? Well, because I bring close to 15 to maybe 2,000 followers who see my stories. You got to make a business, Patreon, merch, like just everything. Sponsors. That's the major thing. Sponsors. And also I'm in talks of trying to get an office to build a studio because I can't do it by myself anymore, and I need an intern or a producer and all that stuff. So that's going to cost money. So that's one of the things, because you can make money if you have a lot of hits on YouTube and this. So you have to figure out a way how to make money on YouTube, on podcasts, on sponsors, on promotions, like anything that you can do to get your name out there. And this is where, like, you say, hey, it's more fun for you, but it was fun for me back then. Not anymore. Now it's going to be a business where I still work my full-time job. I mean, I get some money here and there on the sides and all that stuff, but I really want to make this into a business. And I don't care if like Joe Rogan, everyone talks about he got over $150 million on Spotify. The only thing is when you get sponsors and this, they're going to tell you, hey, if we're going to give you this money or this, we don't want you to be like this. I'm telling you,
fuck that.
I cannot. I said, nope. I can't be censored. This is how I am. Take it or leave it. MegaMan's a zebra. I do what I want. I don't give a fuck. I'll bite your hand if I don't like your ass. It says that's just how it is. But like it's a lesson. I'm learning all these new things, but what comes from it is experience. But hey, I'm gonna one day. I just take my episode like it's my last, because I remember Martin Moreno from the Yo-Yo Podcast. He told me, what's your end game? And says, I don't know. He said, you don't make MegaMan. You should focus on your episode like it's your last, because you never know. You never know. This could be your last, or you never know if you're going to keep on going. So put all your effort and mind and passion into this episode to make it fucking good. Like, and ever since then, every time I have an episode, I just mentally think like this is my last episode, but it's not. It's actually not. But I really want to make it good. And I just really want to make it very original. And I really want to do whatever I can to do my homework to make this interview really go as flow,
Yeah, for sure. I want to take it back a step, right? Now, we talked about your podcast, where you're headed. I want to know, where did the MegaMan nickname come from?
Oh, man, the MegaMan nickname came from shout outs to my cousin, Stephen Gomez, RIP. In 2000, I think the early 2000s, he died of a accident. He fell asleep driving. He got hit by a diesel truck, right, faced on and everything. So, but with him, he was the one back in the day when we were living in Wilmington. He was the first person to have a regular Nintendo on the block, and it just came out. And he had all these games, Super Mario 3, 2, Mega Man, and all. And I remember the stories where the kids would line up like you're going to the classroom, line up, guys. And each person would play like for 10 minutes, playing his Nintendo. And I was like, hey, what game do you want to play? It's like, I don't know. It's like, I got this game called Mega Man 2. And I started playing with it. I fell in love with it. And ever since then, that's been my all-time favorite video game of Nintendo. And I still, when I bought my kids back in the day an Xbox One, they said, what games you're going to buy us? So like, I'm not going to buy you shit. I'm going to buy my own. So the first game I bought was the Mega Man collection on Xbox One. And I played it a couple days ago, but that's where the name came from. And people think like, oh, why'd you name it? It's like, well, I named it not only because it's my favorite video game, but also I named it to, to give shout outs to my cousin Steven that passed away.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good tribute. Now, my question is, because you might run into a bit of an issue, trying to
I know I already talked with my lawyers about that. Yeah.
Would you plan on changing it, or?
Yeah, well, we might change it because maybe add a letter to it, so it just, all you have to do is just, we looked into it. It's like, well, you can just add a letter to it, like Mega Man, like, or like whatever.
a hyphen or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. Or who knows? Maybe we'll change it, but we're gonna come up with a catchy name, but we're gonna still keep it as Mega Man. But my lawyer's in talks to see if we can still use it, because I don't want to get sued for copyrights because of a Capcom, because that's Capcom over there in Japan. So we're gonna see what's up and everything, and if it's good it's okay, then we'll keep it. If not, then we'll come up with some catchy names, and everything. So yeah, that was talks like for a year ago.
I mean, if you had to change it, would that be kind of like a big deal to you, or just kind of like, hey, that's just business?
I think in a way it's business, but when you have the name Mega Man, there was always going to find a way, there's always going to be a title. Everyone's going to know me as Mega Man, but people just know me as Mega Man. Oh shit, it's Mega Man, but they don't know me as Steven Martinez. I always tell them, hey, my name is Steve Martinez. Nah, we like Mega Man better.
See, like when I was putting together the little poster for you, I'm like, I know his name's Steven. That's why I fucked up the first time. I'm like, I put it with the V.
Some people just tell me as Steven. It's like, that's not how you say Steven. It's like, I know, like the commercial Jack Steffen.
Oh, that's old school, man. I love those commercials. Right? Jack Stefanovic.
Jack Steffen. No one knows about those commercials. They're hilarious.
When'd you graduate high school, man?
Oh man, like in 98.
98. Okay, so I mean, just a few years older than me, but yeah, I graduated in 04, and I would see that commercial all the time, watching cartoons and shit in the morning. So that's funny.
My favorite commercials was Worthington Fords.
Yeah.
You know, when I was little, when they used to tell, it's like, oh, go see Cal. I thought he said, I told my mom, why is he saying pussy cow?
That's it. That is what it sounded like, man. I think that was a nice little controversy back then. I think a lot of people thought that as well.
Yeah, I was telling my mom that because we used to, back when we were living over here, we used to listen to Kiss FM Power 106. When they had Rick D's in the morning. Remember Rick D's?
Yep.
And they had a commercial, and he used to sing it, pussy cow, pussy cow, pussy cow. It's like, that's not what she says. It says, go see cow. Like, oh.
Either way, you remembered it, right?
Fuck it, yeah. Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you, like, when you started the podcast, how's it been going so far with you?
For me, I think it's been going well, man. Initially, I had a decent little audience, I think I had like 50 people that would listen in the first few episodes. And it was all people that I knew from high school and stuff like that. A lot of people actually kind of like, it surprised me. They were like very loyal to the show when I hadn't even had conversations with them in like ever,
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And I think, I'm not going to try to put myself over too much. I don't think I'm anybody like super special. I'm your average guy and everything, but I think there's a lot of people who don't know me that kind of wanted to get to know me, because I think I always came off as like maybe a little standoffish, a little bit, like not necessarily like an asshole, but just somebody that you wouldn't be able to, have a conversation with. And when people, find that I actually can open up and have a conversation, they're just kind of like, I didn't know that was you at all, and listening to the podcast, a lot of them are like, wait a minute, every time I listen, I learn a new fact about you. And I'm like, well, that's the honesty and vulnerability that I have with it. I don't give a shit. I'm giving you me. And I'm sure, I'm having, like I said, I'm having fun with it. My first episodes were all fucking my friends and my cousin and family and everybody. And to me, I call those the practice episodes, the safe episodes. My first episode was talking to my cousin about steroid use. And I think that was a good topic to start on because it hooked a few people that maybe wouldn't have listened otherwise. The episodes that get a lot of love are the ones that I have with my friends. We call each other the drunken knights of the round table. We just kind of shoot the shit.
That's a catchy ass shit.
Yeah, every 10 episodes, they come on, so for episode 10, 20, 30, they'll be back on 40, and we have like all these stupid videos that I put together or like, little GIFs or whatever. And people really seem to like those because of the interaction we have with each other. So, I mean, yeah, in a nutshell, I think the podcast is going well. It's fun. I mean, I would probably say I have like a couple hundred regular listeners. What's kind of been the most surprising is when you look at the map, because I use Libsyn to host. And so Libsyn gives you like a map. It looks like an electoral map, but of the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. People have listened on every continent except Australia and Antarctica, and I'm like, Australia I can get. If I can get a fucking penguin listening in Antarctica, that'd be badass.
For some kind of reason, I was looking at that and I like, man, I didn't know had people hearing it in Libya or in Jordan in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But I get out all my listeners. I'll tell you, the United States is always first. You know what's my second country that listens to the podcast? South Africa.
Interesting. Yeah, I had a listener in Morocco.
yeah, or Iceland, or I had one from Falkland Islands over there by the islands of Argentina.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so crazy, man. I'm like, how the fuck did they even hear about it? Like where? I mean, I had the Philippines. I'm like, Romania,
Russia.
I haven't gone Russia yet. Croatia. But I'm like, do we even speak the same language? Like, how are y'all, listening and understanding this?
Probably military people.
Maybe that's what I was thinking because I had a lot of people listen like in Tennessee and shit. I'm like, I don't know anybody in Tennessee or like like the Fort Hood area, and I'm like, okay, that's probably military people listening from another guest who promoted it. But it's so crazy to see where everybody's listening from. I thought it was just going to stay local, which is why I grew up in Almani. And a lot of the guests I interview are from Almani because I love telling the story of how we grew up. I love ranking the food from Almani, best pizza. We're going to do best tacos in a bit, but
I'm the first guest. I'm the first person outside of Almani, huh?
No, actually, no. I've actually had people from Canada. I've had people from Brazil.
Oh, wow.
The UK. Yeah. So, I mean, you are in rare air though, where you're not from Almani, because a lot of people are, that I interview are from Almani. But no, man, I try to switch it up. I like to switch it up.
I go to Almani sometimes because my boy Mo from Craft Beer Kings is right there on Beck Road.
Oh yeah. Everybody loves that place.
I go over there, and sometimes on a Friday night because the car wash is right there. Sometimes they have a guy cooking tacos, some bomb ass tacos and burritos.
Yeah, man. I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to now, like every ninth, it's every 10 episodes as well, but every 19, 20, whatever, 29, 39, we'll have a food challenge. So my friend George and I will go out there, two big fucking husky guys enjoying good food. I mean, we're qualified, right?
Hey, I'm a barbecue guy.
Yeah, and I got that going on too. I kind of put a pause to it with the whole COVID thing, but I did start it because I got laid off at the beginning of the summer. So I'm like, fuck it, man. Let's grill and make some money. And I started smoking ribs and tri-tip and all kinds of shit. And just like the podcast, I had a lot of people out of nowhere that I didn't regularly talk to, just supporting, which like kind of picking on what we talked about earlier. I love those people, the ones that will look at what you're doing and congratulate you and support it.
The diehards.
Those people are the best because we don't, instinctively we're not raised like that, And so when I get those type of people that support me, I want to do everything I can to, give it back to them, whether it's giving them a good fucking product when I'm cooking or an entertaining podcast or just a fucking thank you. I sent out stickers to listeners and, that's a little something. I wish I had t-shirts to give them, but you know, I just I appreciate people that appreciate me. You know?
Yeah, I haven't. People are asking me, Megan, what's up with the merch? It's been 2 years. It's like, well, I've been putting out so much content because my goal was like content, put out content to stay consistent. With the merch and all that stuff will be next year, like, you know, stickers, pins. You know, I want to make a letter, so every time a person purchased something, I'm gonna write, "Thank you so much. This is MegaMan," and you know, have my signature on it and stuff like that, and have it stamped, because the listeners, the followers that support you and my podcast, you know, we're never gonna forget about them. And I remember one time there was a person that told me like, "Oh, MegaMan, you're gonna forget about us if like you get big, like if you have over 3 or 4 million people." I don't forget the people who been listening to me since day one. I'll never forget them, no matter what. And think a lot of people also say like, "Oh, you just follow people." Like, yeah, I know each and every one of those user people who listens to on my Instagram, because you have to get to know their life and what they do, and you know, and catch up with them and stuff like that. And that's always been me. Now, there's other podcasters that, you know, they've been listening since day one, and those podcasters don't give a fuck about them. It's like a cattle, like, well, you're dead. Well, you're the old ones. I need new friends. Okay, those new friends are old friends. I need new friends. There's some podcasters don't give a fuck about their followers and fans, and you know. But for me, I wasn't brought up that way. You know, I was never brought up like that.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of, you know, I like that theory too. I like to check in with people that have been on the show. Or, you know, I invite them back. I've had people come on multiple times just because.
3 times. You had a person 3 times.
Yeah. No, my buddy Whitey's kind of like the unofficial co-host. So he's now on like his 6th or 7th appearance. And yeah, my buddy Roy, you know, who I worked with at a school, he'll be on again. But I just like having the same people, because you already have that good rapport. People have already kind of, you know, gotten to know them a little bit. So you're going to give them a little more. And it's just, again, it's just fun, you know. And if they're willing to be on there and talk some stupid shit with me, I'm all for it, you know?
Oh man, we haven't even scratched the surface. I have so many stories, man. Like, it's so many, like from datings, like who was my best guest, who was my worst guest. Oh man, I'll tell you.
Let's hear that. Let's hear at least one of your worst guests. You don't have to give a name. I want to hear what made it bad, because that's one of the things I was going to ask you.
Okay, one of my worst guests I ever have. I'll give you a hint. You had him on.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That guy's a trip.
I don't know. I think in a way, he was in a bad mood. You know, I love him. He's a cool ass guy. But at the time, I was trying to figure out personalities of people from guests, and just something he was just very weird. I think, is this his mood? Is this like the way how he is? I don't know if he's being serious or mad or cool or obnoxious and all, but I think it kind of just, the energy was kind of off, where I asked him a question, a personal question. I heard you and Martin Rizzo were ghostwriters for Fluffy. It's like, take that off the episode. I don't want to talk about that. But I told him, like, well, why? It's like, don't put that. And said, well, you said that on the What's Up Food podcast. Like, and that's the thing. And after that, it kind of threw off the episode, where that episode was probably the shortest episode I have ever done on my podcast. It was close to maybe about 39 minutes. That's short.
Yeah, that's short.
Yeah. So, and I had to talk for a little bit just to make it like 49 or 50 minutes. But yeah, it's just, I try to figure him out, and I met him. You know, he's cool and everything and stuff like that. I love that guy. He's a good guy, but it's just at the time I think he was just kind of off. I think he was in a bad mood.
He was probably on a lot of drugs that day.
I don't know if he was on some mushrooms or this, whatever. So, and I think in a way, because of that, and some other people's who I kind of regret having on, that's one of the things where you go home. And I have 2 binders, one for my strong points and one for my weak points. And I wrote that down. And ever since then, I really want to handpick my guests, because people go by grams of like, oh, this guy has over 1 million or 10,000 and all that. But okay, yeah, but what happens if you get him on? Does he know how to fucking talk? Does he know how, is he a cool person? Is he this? So that's when Chris, I remember Chris from Kickback Podcast says, hey, MegaMan, if you really get someone on who you already know, you could feel comfortable with, it's easy to talk to and all that stuff. Don't bring a person on that he's like, oh my God, like I want to get him because he has over 100 Ks and I'm going to get the follower. People are trying to get that gram. It's like, no, I want real people who I already know and I already socialize and they can hold up a conversation. They're super cool. They don't have a character. They're not fucking fake. They're just, I can say whatever I want and they're just themselves. And ever since then, little by little, I'm making transitions. So a lot of people always DM me or email me. It's like, hey, I want to come on your podcast. It doesn't work like that. And me, if I ask you, hey, I want you to come on my podcast, me telling you that, it's super rare because I don't ask people to come on my podcast. I just go by what emails and I just go by who the word of mouth and everything. So I want real good people. And, you know, like you say, you do your homework. You want to see what that person's all about on the gram, on social media, the podcast. Oh, he's super genuine. Like I was telling you like yesterday, it's like, hey, this is going to be a dope ass episode. I already know.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
You got to have that chemistry. And I think you now and Social Primate from Podcast and Kickback Podcast, I think with you three, you got to have a good flow from another podcaster. And it's hard to have that because it's too much ego involved. You don't want to step on people's toes and stuff like that. But dude, this is like a smooth ass interview.
Hell yeah, man. I didn't even take any notes.
You know what? Me either. The only thing, I just have my little hot points and stuff like that. But it's just like, I like to call that my cheating paper. Like if I don't know, I have my paper. And that's the thing with the questions, you know, sometimes I used to do it on top of my head, but it's like, there was a time where in an episode, I asked the person 6 questions at the same time. You know, it's like, you already asked me that, MegaMan. It's like, oh shit. So that's why I have my notes there now.
No, you know, I used to really be like super anal about it. And I would have extensive notes. I would literally have probably about, 4 to 5 pages of notes per guest. And it would read almost like a script, right? Because I wanted to be very thorough. I'm a good writer, and people, I can lead them. But what I found was that I was too focused on the questions that I missed the actual conversation sometimes. And so when we were kind of, going back and forth with question and answer, I didn't listen to really pick it up. It was just kind of like noise, right? To fill in a question, to fill in an answer. And I feel like the free format that I've been experimenting with in the last few episodes, it's a lot more fun, because where I might have missed a detail that I really wanted to ask, we can always do it again, And in the top of my head, I already know what I want to talk about. If I have a guest that really freezes up, I know there's a formula in my head where I could be like, all right, where did you grow up? Who were you in high school? Things like that. How is your COVID going? So I have like the backup questions in my head for somebody that I might not know. If it's somebody that I know, I'm not worried about it anymore, because we have a lot of shit that we can really just pick at.
Oh yeah.
And I really wasn't worried with you because I had paid attention and listened to some of your episodes. I see how you conduct yourself in the lives, and I'm like, oh dude, this is gonna fucking mesh super well. So yeah, I agree, man.
It takes time. Like I'll like, there's a paper I have when I have a guest on. I have like 1 through 10. These are the questions. Then I have a little bar that says break. Then I have it because I don't want to be talking for like an hour and 30 minutes. Because sometimes in a way, like maybe my guest needs to take a beer break or a pee-pee break or whatever. So I have all that stuff. Like they say, I always want to talk about the present, what's going on and everything, ask the questions. I want to break everything down, like step by step of where you, like you said, where'd you grow up at, how'd you start, and talk about random stuff like whatever and stuff, because I want my guests to kind of get out of their seashell and just blossom and be like, I'm just one of the guys, even for the ladies. I have a lot of women coming on, and I've been doing that's the hardest right there, because I have 50 women coming on the podcast, and it's going to be all girl power, but some of them, I always tell them, do you want to do a face-to-face or do you want to do an IG live? And it's kind of the mixed up. Like, we'll do a MegaMan After Dark, and everything. Like later on tonight, I'm going to be doing a interview with comedian Monique. Flores, she's a comedian. She knows Johnny Rocket and Martin Rizzo and those guys and stuff like that. I'm going to have her on and stuff. So, like I said, I have to be seasoned because, there was a time where I got rusty, where I didn't do no episodes. And when I first did my episode in 2 or 3 months, I was like, I feel kind of off. So that's one of the reasons doing podcasts, but also doing the MegaMan After Dark, so you could still be seasoned and do other people's podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people said the hardest working man in the podcast game. And because I got that from Frank Blanco from No Father, No Problem. He's just like, you're just out there hustling. It's just, I have to do what I got to do. I got to get that exposure, some people can be doing out one, or maybe they have families and all that. Well, to me, I don't have time for that. I have time to get my name out there by 2025.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Well, shit. I mean, this has been a good one. I think we're at about an hour right now, which is, it doesn't even feel like a few minutes, but
it felt like 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to, I want to keep you to your time frame because I know you're, like you said, hardest working man. You got another podcast to get to, but I want to end it on, I like to ask my guests, and I haven't done this in a couple episodes just because I've been shuffling the episodes around. I like to ask my guests about the next episode, right? And you're number 34 on episode number 35. I'm going to have a guy that's like a super fan of the Bee Gees, like super obsessed. And I don't understand that mindset. But my question to you to kind of prep for the next episode is, do you have something that you're kind of like a super fan of, or do you know someone who's like a super fan, a big time collector, anything like that?
Like someone who collects like memorabilia?
Yeah, but that's like super over the top.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting this guy. He's from Pennsylvania. He collects video games, and his username is called Retro Brews, where he has craft beers, but also on his pictures he has a craft beer of a different drink, but also a different video game from a Nintendo.
Oh, nice, cool, man.
Yeah, he has all that stuff: the TurboGrafx 16, the Neo Geo, the Genesis, like the Nintendo. Like, he has this everything, and he has one of the most coolest pages. I'm gonna get him on my IG. But yeah, man, he even has like him. I think I don't know if we're the only ones, but I have 2 unopened Nintendo Power Gloves over there in Northern California that I have to go pick up. Yeah. I have an unopened. This is worth $6,000. Word on the street of unopened a Nintendo game of the movie Big Trouble in Little China.
Huh.
That one. I have 2 boxes unopened of Garbage Pail Kids. One with all of them, and the one that they did an error on it, which the ones they made a mistake on that one, that's worth more money than the other one. I have 10 King Griffey Jr. rookie cards, a Jose Canseco. I have a Sandy Koufax rookie card. I'm a Giants fan from San Francisco. I don't know why I have it. My dad gave it to me. I don't know why, but yeah, I collect stuff, but it's all at my mom's place.
Cool, man. So that's good. Like, I should be interesting the next episode to hear from a super collector, super fan. Before we close out, just want to, throw your social media out there if you haven't already. Where can people find you? What's the best way to contact you? What should they be listening to?
All right. You can find me on Instagram at the MegaMan's Podcast page. If you want to be a guest on, email me at Steven, not Steven with the VEN, Steven with the PH, Ian Martinez 76 at yahoo.com. My next episode will be this Sunday, episode 178 with Pam, from the host from Cafe Compan Podcast. She's based out of San Diego. And then after that, next week, 180, I'll be doing, man, I haven't done this for like 6 or 7 months. The MegaMan's life, which I talk about my personal life, what's been going on this year to end out 2020, so we can start off fresh for 2021. Then I have Driscoll Kid, and I have a lot of more people. I'm in talks right now trying to get Felipe Esparza. I really want him on my podcast, Crowns and Hops. There's like the endless of guests I want to come on, and hopefully next year I can be the first podcaster to be a guest on Tony A's Rhodium Radio, because all he has is nothing but musicians and Chicano, that shed light on Chicano movements in the music scene and all. But I really want to be the first podcaster to be invited on his podcast show.
All right. Well, again, Stephen, really appreciate it, man. I wish you the best of luck. I know, you've got a lot of drive in you. Like I said on Instagram, you seem like a very genuine, passionate person when it comes to this. Mm-hmm. So, from one Hispanic former hater, to another Hispanic guy, like keep going for it, man. Keep doing what you're doing. And if we, decide to link up again, I would love to have you back on at some point.
And I want to say one last thing before we sign off. We have to stop this thing of bashing on each other, hating on each other, all this jealousy. We gotta be together as one. It doesn't matter if you're a podcaster, your business, entrepreneur, like athlete, whatever. We need to be really, really unity. And once we're unity with everyone else, man, there's no stopping us. And that especially goes with a lot of the Latino and the Latina podcasts. We gotta help each other out. Like if you're gonna help me, I gotta help you, man. I just want to see people grow. I want to see people to get where I'm at, and everything. Because for some reason, I have a heart, and I just want to see people grow, and I want to see people succeed.
Nice. Well said. All right, guys, for everybody listening at home, appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Late.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.